Samuel, the last judge of Israel, witnessed a significant turning point in the nation's history. After appointing his sons as judges, the people grew dissatisfied and demanded a king to lead them, just like other nations did. Reluctantly, Samuel prayed, allowing God to decide. The people were warned a king would impose taxes, taking 10% of their wealth, but they still insisted. Saul was chosen as Israel's first king. However, his reign was marked by disobedience and idolatry. He even made offerings to a pagan god of the Philistines, the enemies he was supposed to fight. Saul's failure led to David's rise, who was a shepherd and the youngest son of Jesse, overlooked by his family, but chosen by God for his pure heart. David's bravery that was shown when he defeated Goliath, the giant Philistine warrior with just a stone, cutting off his head with Goliath's own sword. He brought the head to Jerusalem as a symbol of victory. Although David wasn't seeking the throne at first, Saul's jealousy led to hatred, even killing priests in pursuit of David. Ultimately, Saul's reign ended in tragedy, and David succeeded him as a king, becoming a symbol of faith, courage, and God's favor. David's journey reminds us that God sees beyond appearances and chooses leaders from the heart and character, not in their stature.
After Saul's death, David unites Israel as one country, and then God makes him a promise called the Bayit, which is a Hebrew word meaning son or heir, kingdom or dynasty, or physical house. David will not build a physical house, which would be Solomon later. After this, David has sexual relations with Bathsheba, who was married to Uriah, a soldier in the Israeli army. David tries to cover this up by having Uriah placed in the front line of battle to think he wasn't actually killing him. This was actually killing, and then he commits adultery with Bathsheba. Prophet Nathan confronts David about his actions, and because of David's sin and his adultery, his war efforts will be just bad, and the child born from David and Bathsheba will actually die. But later, they will have a son named Solomon who will build the temple. David goes through a rebellion from his son and eventually restores the kingdom and restores his throne and rebuilds the kingdom, and everything is good. And then he dies and he transitions to the reign of Solomon.
Solomon is the son of David and Bathsheba. Before David died, he told Solomon to be strong and show yourself a man. Walk in the way of the Lord and keep his commandments. Solomon became king after David. God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding to help him lead his people. People came from all over to hear the wisdom of Solomon. David then asked God if he could build him a temple, and God said no, Solomon would do it. Solomon fulfilled the promises of a Bayit, which are being a king, the heir of the king, and building a nice palace for himself. It took him 7 years to build the temple for God, but it took him longer to build the palace for himself. The 3 things you can't multiply are wives, silver, and gold, and horses. Wives is about adultery, silver and gold is about wealth, and horses about seeking war and horses. Solomon had 700 wives. Rehoboam is the son of Solomon. Solomon is a prefigurement of Christ, because he was the wisest man till Christ. He builds a temple, and Christ is the temple, and he is the Antichrist figure. Solomon sinned, so God split the kingdom into 2.
An overall summary of royal kingdoms is through the books Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles, and they detail the rise, reign, and decline of Israel's monarchy, providing a spiritual and historical perspective on the nation's kings. It starts in 1 Samuel with the Israelites rejecting God's leadership through the judges and demanding a king. Saul, who is Israel's first king, is chosen, but his reign is marked very short by lots of sins. And then it goes into 2 Samuel, which brings unity and expansion to Israel, but it is marred by personal failures, including sins with Bathsheba. In 1 Kings, David's son Solomon ascends to the throne, and it kind of just goes over how Solomon is going into more sins, and it also talks about the kingdom of Judah. And then 2 Kings, the Chronicles, it talks about the decline of both kingdoms due to disobedience and sinning. And finally, Chronicles is basically a retell of much of the history, and it focuses on more of the kings of Judah and God's covenant promises. And yeah, that is everything for Real Kingdom.